Welcome everyone to the Living Room Lecture Series at Historic Locust Grove. We're so pleased you're with us today. My name is Hannah Zimmerman and I am the Marketing and Communications Director at Locust Grove. We're pleased to have William Bauer, who has been our Chamber Music Program Director for many, many years, to speak with us today about musical Louisville in the Croghan era. A few quick housekeeping notes. We'll ask everyone to keep their microphone turned off, but you're always welcome to keep your video camera turned on. It's always wonderful. It's always wonderful to be able to see your faces. It is also St. Patrick's Day, so happy St. Patrick's Day to you. We always celebrate St. Patrick's Day at Locust Grove because William Croghan, who built Locust Grove between 1792 and 1795, was born in Dublin, Ireland. As you have questions today, we'll ask you to keep them in the chat. So you can kick those over in the chat and I will make sure they get answered. We also always want to know where you're watching from and what beverage you're enjoying today, whether it be tea like me or something a little stronger for the holiday. And for now, I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Dr. Carol Ely, to let us know what's happening at Locust Grove. Welcome, Carol.
Hi everybody. Well, this morning when I got here, and you can see I'm at Locust Grove, my office was full of a cloud of dust and fumes because they've started construction. It's okay now, we've had the doors and windows open. And so if you're physically on site, you will see that it's very different. There's construction fencing, there's tractors coming and going, there's mud everywhere. And we're very excited for the start of construction. We officially announced it just a few days ago. I think we sent out a press release. So what this means is just as the world is starting to reopen, as people are getting vaccinated and we're starting to plan in-person events, Locust Grove is somewhat constrained in what we can offer. We've lost a bit of our parking and for the time being, the use of the auditorium. So I think you can expect that we will continue to be virtual for some of our programs for the near future, at least, including the lecture series. So if you've enjoyed the lecture series from home, you are in luck because we're likely to continue that for at least the next few months. And we are looking to begin again some of the events that are everybody's favorite. Unfortunately, we've had to cancel the Gardener's Fair for this year. It's too soon for us to get permission to do an in-person event, but we still think we'll be able to go forward with our Antiques Fair with some hybrid version of the Jane Austen Festival. We're looking at 4th of July, what we'll be able to do. So we're hoping that as things open up, we can continue to work around the restrictions the construction is putting on us. But by fall, fingers crossed, everybody, luck of the Irish be with us. By fall, we are hoping that we will have our new facilities, open air pavilion where we could do lectures with 300 people if we wanted to. Open air pavilion, a better library, better interpreted grounds and outbuildings. So we're hoping that all of that will be available just as the world fully recovers and reopens from COVID. So in the meantime, over the last year, we've been so pleased to be able to present events virtually. It's really been a blessing. And one of the incredibly bright spots in our lives this last year has been the chamber music series and the work that Bill Bauer and the musicians did to record safely in the house. And so we could bring the experience of a chamber music concert to more people who had never had a chance. And we hope that by fall, winter, we'll be able to have that experience of sharing the historic music in the historic spaces. So I won't take up any more of your time because you want to hear from Bill and hear some beautiful music. So take it away again, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Carol. It is very exciting to now have our capital campaign projects underway. So don't be alarmed if you do visit Locust Grove. The area around the house, as Carol said, is not being touched. So there's still plenty of space to enjoy the beauty of Locust Grove, especially this time of year. If you would like to turn on your video, you have been given that option by the host. which is me. So you can go ahead and turn on your video if you'd like. We also understand if you want to stay incognito today. And just a reminder that we will be asking you to leave questions or comments in the chat. So if you have further questions, you can leave them in the chat and I will make sure that Bill answers them. I also do want to let you know that Bill is the founder of our one of the founders of our chamber music concert series, and we have our final virtual concert this Sunday, March 21st. Now, Hannah, you may be wondering, what do you mean by a virtual concert? Well, I will put a link in the chat for you to purchase tickets, and then at 3 p.m. on Sunday, March 21st, you will receive a YouTube link to view the concert. You will have from 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. to view that link. Don't worry if you can't watch it in that time period. It doesn't go anywhere. You'll be able to watch it at any time once you have the link. But at 5:30, we all hop on Zoom, all of the chamber music ticket holders, Bill, our musicians, myself, sometimes my dog. We hop on Zoom and we have a conversation about the music from about 5:30 to 7. It's a lot like our lectures, except that we get to talk a little bit more informally about the music. And it's just really one, as Carol said, one of the most wonderful things that we've been able to continue. And we hope you'll be able to join us this Sunday. If you purchase a ticket at a higher level than our concert ticket, so if you click in the link and you see subscriber at any level over $25, even though this is the final concert of the series, you will still receive the links to the other concerts and the other concert conversations. We recorded those other conversations. So we do have an entire concert package. You may have missed December and February, but the music and the conversation have been recorded for posterity. So if you choose to support chamber music at a higher level, we will make sure that you can experience the whole season and not just this one concert. And without further ado, Bill, are you ready to be introduced?
I am.
All right. Let me introduce you. William Bauer is a violinist and conductor based in St. Louis, Missouri. He began his Baroque studies from the viola d'amore. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, great. At age 14, progressing so rapidly on that instrument that at age 20, he was awarded a debut recital at London's Wigmore Hall, a live radio broadcast of the same on National Public Radio, and a tour as soloist with the Pro Musica Chamber Orchestra, which included a recording of Vivaldi's Concerto R392 for the Deutsche Grammophon label. In 1983, he founded a research project on the subject of women composers from the Baroque and Classical eras. In 1985, having identified more than 200 such composers, he was awarded a $20,000 grant from the Kentucky Foundation for Women to fund the research and collection of these extant works for a 3-year period. In 1986, he enlisted 5 other independent performing scholars to found and register the Ars Femina Project and the Ars Femina Ensemble to popularize the resulting music and to research and publish some of that music. In 1993, he transcribed, edited for Modern Performance, and directed the 20th century premiere of Francesca Cassini's 1625 opera, I'm going to do my best with this Italian, La Liberazione di Ruggiero.
Yes.
For CBS Masterworks. Spent 2 weeks in Italy, that's what shows. The BBC Music Magazine awarded the recording a double 5-star rating. This is the highest rating for best performance and recorded sound. The CD was subsequently named one of the top 10 best opera recordings of 1994. In 1998, Bauer accepted an appointment to Webster University. He's one of 2 founders of Early Music St. Louis. He continues to edit for Editions Ars Femina and its sister publication line Africanus Editions, which is music by Black composers of the Baroque and Classical eras. He performs with Atlanta's New Trinity Baroque, Boston Baroque, and Chicago Baroque Orchestra. He has directed the Festival de Musica Antigua and programs, organizes, and performs in concerts for the Chicago Cultural Center and the Chicago Humanities Festival. This May, he returns to Belgrade to lead concerts for the Belgrade Early Music Festival and direct the Belgrade Baroque Academy. And of course, he is one of the founders of the Chamber Music Concert Series at Locust Grove. Welcome, Bill Bauer. We're so pleased to have you with us today.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here, actually. Are we ready to jump in?
Let's dive in. Let's do it.
Okay. All right, so this is kind of loose today, and we want to give you plenty of opportunity to ask questions as we roll along. I've divided the topic into about 5 topic areas. We're going to go back to like the beginning of Louisville, right? And all of you historians out there, be very kind to me because I often make gaffes. But I have all these people around me to correct me very gently and just to step in as is appropriate. The other thing is that there's more than a little bit of anecdotal information that has become attached to the chamber music series. I've watched Locust Grove change its narrative through the years, and I'm not up on what the most current version of things are. I've heard stories come up, I've heard stories get debunked, and then sometimes it even comes around and the original story gets, plugged back in. So that's my disclaimer. Music in Louisville. Going back up to the beginning of permanent settlement in Louisville. We all know that there was lots of, and it's true of St. Louis too, fur trapping, itinerant people who would take advantage of living on the banks of a big river for trade to send things down to New Orleans. The Ohio River was part of that traffic way. But the permanent settlement in Louisville came in 1780 with the town charter of Louisville on May 1st. And it was with the approval of the Virginia General Assembly and the then Governor Thomas Jefferson. In 1780, about 300 families migrated to the area as a result of those actions. And there were enough people here to start a fire department. And the first street plan of Louisville was laid out by William Pope. I think it was like 5 blocks, basically. And those documents I believe are available online. The original plat is really interesting and amusing. I'm not going to go into the whole story of Corn Island and all the rest of that, although George Rogers Clark is attached to that. That was Corn Island was a first significant settlement, but that no longer exists. It also had another name, I found out, which you probably all know. But we're talking about the city of Louisville or the town of Louisville in the area right, I think, approximately where the 2nd Street Bridge is.
Yes.
Today. So most of the dwellings were log dwellings. They weren't very gracious. I think Louisville's first brick building came a few years later, but not 1780. So the fact that Locust Grove started in 1790, what the construction?
Construction started circa 1792, and we believe it was completed about 1795.
Okay, all right. So that was pretty grandiose for people who were living in log cabins, a lot of one-room log cabins, as well as the businesses they established. Music at that time, again, was pretty itinerant. You had people who would come through, but they weren't holding organized entertainments. There was not an idea of concerts with tickets being sold, et cetera, et cetera. You had musicians that or people who were frontiersmen and yet also like played the violin, for example. We're familiar with the member of the Corps of Discovery who was a Frenchman who played violin as well as all the background attached to him. One of the earliest accounts of music in Louisville, the old downtown Louisville, was of a Frenchman who came through in the fur trade, who had some sort of a musical education. He played some beautiful French airs, which people were kind of confounded by. And then when he saw it wasn't going over very well, he played some fiddle tunes, which went over really big. So the palette of taste for chamber music and serious music has gone up seriously quite a bit since then. Now we're going to talk about a little bit about, this is for St. Patrick's Day, Irish background, Irish music, and then its attachment to Locust Grove. So the Irish were dominated by the culturally, we're talking about musical culture, by the larger neighbor to the east. Britain was dominated by the Italians during this period. They didn't have a lot of homegrown, they didn't appreciate their homegrown composers, and the Irish were sort of a poor cousin to that. The Irish composers and musicians in their country were also largely itinerant. People traveled from city to city, making a living as they could, if they were dedicated musicians. The earliest published piece of Irish music by an Irish composer is John Gamble in 1659 with a ballad called I'll Never Love Ye More. That's the oldest thing that they can point to in print. Followed shortly after that in 1750 is born Philip Croghan, who was the first, one of the earliest Irish composers with published extant work. The famous pianist, John Field, who was a sort of a Edward MacDowell figure, but for Ireland and the whole UK, he was a phenomenon. He was from that era when you had Paganini and just a little bit later, Frederick Chopin. He was sort of a rock star, if you want to call it that. He actually traveled and gave concerts and was widely celebrated. And then Michael Balfe, who wrote ballad operas. He was born in 1808, so his career sort of mirrors the early part of the history of Locust Grove. That where I'm going with all of this is that these were not, in the international set, these were not significant composers, with the exception of possibly John Field. We already talked a little bit about the Crogans. William Croghan was born in Dublin, 1752. Came through Philadelphia to live under the guardianship of his uncle. Got sort of a college education. He gained a surveying certificate from the College of William and Mary, very significant. And he and George Rogers Clark were named principal surveyors of the Virginia state line, and they therefore moved to Louisville to do their work. George Rogers Clark's younger sister was Lucy, and that's the connection, and that's how that marriage was made. Among their 6 children, the last 2 were a set of twins, Charles and Nicholas. They seem to have a pretty bad time health-wise in this family. There's a lot of tuberculosis around at that time, and you know, forensically, nobody can know for sure, but they both died at fairly young ages, and most likely to tuberculosis. Charles went to Paris with his older brother, who was a physician, seeking treatment for his tuberculosis, and he died there. And I didn't know until just recently that he's buried at Père Lachaise Cemetery, along with almost every other famous person in history, including Jim Morrison from the Doors. There's your tie-in.
It's true. It's true. What does Colette, Oscar Wilde, Jim Morrison, and Charles Croghan have in common? They're all buried at Père Lachaise. Yeah,
amazing, just amazing. Oh, and so since we're close to that subject coming up on April 11. So there are some of the most magnificent Holocaust monuments in Père Lachaise as well. those of you who have been there, they're very striking. They're very powerful, and there's one for every concentration camp. They're very humbling. That's a total aside. I don't know where that came from. So obviously I've been there. Music in Louisville. So the first courthouse was completed in 1784, and they were really proud of it. It was 16 by 20 feet, and it was made of logs. Louisville at that time had 63 clapboard finished houses, 37 that were partly finished, and 22 uncovered houses. That means they didn't have a roof, and 100 log cabins. In 1800, the population of Louisville was a burgeoning 359. By comparison, Lexington at this time was a metropolitan area of 1,759. Lexington also looms fairly large in musical history because it was a place where the first place in the United States where the Beethoven Third Symphony was played. It was the first place you'd think it would be in New York or Charleston, South Carolina, but it was by a small musical society in Lexington. So let's let some questions in if we want. Irish music at the time was heavy in song. So ballads especially, and a lot of these we're familiar with now, but that the whole idea was dominated by ballads. The harpers, the harp tradition. On the last chamber music, we had music of Turlough O'Carolan, and he was a harper, which was a profession at that time.
It does seem like we have one question, and I think you just answered it. Would we recognize any of these early tunes? And it sounds like we might recognize some of them. So if so, what are a couple we might recognize?
You've got me stumped for titles because they have thousands of titles. Two different publishers brought out treasuries of early Irish ballads, and there are like thousands in both of the treasuries. They all have descriptive names, but I will tell you that especially today, you'll be hearing them and you don't realize it because they're generally fairly short tunes, and they're hooked into chains of tunes. I would say it's like a medley, right? So you'll hear 4 or 5 tunes, and the musicians will go directly from one into the other without crediting what song they're playing. So today, if you listen to Irish traditional music, you're going to be hearing quite a few of those. So you won't know it though. I do have an interesting aside. In 1654, so during the Cromwell era, Ireland was a pretty sad place because they were being handled pretty punitively because of their orientation. And in 1654, along with some sort of in Dublin was having a problem with wolves, like dogs, wolves. And so they put out a premium on people killing wolves. You could get money for turning in your wolf carcass or your whatever. But as a part of that same edict, they outlawed harpers, pipers, and wandering musicians. Lumped in with the wolves.
I love that. They're marauding musicians along with marauding wolves. All right, I think that's all the questions we have for now. So let's carry on. Okay.
So my whole point for talking about Louisville in the, that 1780 to 1800 corridor is it wasn't really sophisticated. I think it had great expectations. I'm not sure it had great expectations of itself, because for a while it was the edge of the frontier, right? And people were pushing on forward. Music was a side, on the side affair. There were no established musical organizations or traditions. That changes with the arrival of Germans in Louisville. So the first big significant group of Germans arrived in Louisville in 1787. The families were the Kay family, the Brunner family, the Funk family, and the Blankenbaker family. And yes, yes. So just take a look at your letterhead and you'll see Blankenbaker. The Blankenbakers loomed large. They owned property in what's now called the area over by Jeffersontown, which was originally called Brunnerstown, named for the Brunners that I mentioned just a moment ago. A lot of the Germans entered through the port of New Orleans and worked their way up the rivers. So some branched off to the Ohio River and it settled in Cincinnati and Louisville and settled in Cincinnati. Others came up the other direction and settled in St. Louis, which also at this time was pretty primitive. So very comparable. Louisville was probably more sophisticated and established than St. Louis at the same time. But along with them, they brought their culture and their music. So Louisville's first orchestra was a group called the Society of St. Cecilia. And it was established by German immigrants who were merchants and people who were permanently settling in Louisville. And they brought musical compositions with them. They brought their instruments. They brought probably the larger complement of wind instruments from the period. Strings were really easy to carry along. Fifes and flutes, pretty easy. The larger, more sophisticated instruments you would need to staff an orchestra sort of arrive in Louisville at that time. Wonderful treasury we have at University of Louisville is the part books that belonged to that society. And it's music from the part books date from 1818. They're preserved in the rare book collection there. We have used them for our chamber music series. And we have a very nice relationship with the people in the archive room who make things available to us and tolerate our, invading their wonderful ancient materials. But the Society of St. Cecilia was a German-founded group, and most of the music is Germanic. I mean, it's all the people you would expect. It's Mozart, it's Beethoven, a bunch of Bohemian composers from the time period. It's whatever was popular in that 1880s to 1820 area. There are, oh gosh, I want to say 16 part books, and they're all divided into various instrumental collections. Like there's the violin, first violin book, second violin book, flute, trumpet, early clarinet. There are fantastic first printed editions of Mozart chamber music and Beethoven chamber music. It's not all symphonic, and the symphony, of course, was much smaller back then. So we have mined that a bit through the years. Running forward to 1830, the free African American population of Louisville was in 1830 was 232, and in 1860 it was 1917 free blacks. These were people who were making a living as some of them were merchants, a lot of them were tradespeople. Louisville was a very interesting crossroads then. I think it still is. But these free blacks in, what year was it? In 1852, established their own music society called the Louisville Mozart Society. And they did it in conjunction with many of the German musicians who were already, pretty instrumental in musical life in Louisville. That was something I didn't know until just recently. And it's fascinating, and you'll accept it. It's outside of our period, right? So the chamber music, we set from the beginning of the construction of the house till the end of the Croghan occupancy. So that means that Stephen Foster has always had to have a asterisk by him in the few times that we have worked with him. But this is the Louisville Mozart Society is something I'm going to find out more about, and we'll do something with that. I'm not really sure. Any questions at this point?
What was the year that the first orchestra began in Louisville? We had a couple people miss the date.
1818.
1818. Okay,
that's
great.
Right.
And also, just to put this in your head, we've had some requests. People have noticed the violin behind you. If you if you ever cared to just, give us a couple tunes off the top of your head, no pressure, just if you were interested. But you were getting ready to say something else about the first Louisville Orchestra.
Oh, I was going to say, I might entertain that at the end. How's that?
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Yes. So the good and bad news is, with my teaching appointments, we have been virtual for an entire year. Actually, the 1 year anniversary was March 2nd. We were one of the earliest cities to shut down. And the good news is, or whatever, my university announced that we will return to full in-person teaching in September. So you're in my teaching studio right now, which is terrible, wonderful and terrible all at the same time, which is why there's a violin in the background.
It's all right. I think Locust Grove living room lecture participants have seen almost every room of my house, because it just depends which room I'm presenting from that day.
Well, it's a nicely kept house, Hannah.
Thank you.
I applaud you for that.
Thank you. The dog is sleeping just off camera. We did have another question. What year would the first music venue have appeared in Louisville? James is thinking of either a concert hall or perhaps a saloon.
So taverns more so than churches. I mean, today we think, well, churches could be music venues. They weren't. They were considered sacred spaces. So people didn't give concerts. You could go to a church to hear music in a church service, but they weren't places where, like a choir gave a concert. So taverns were the place. And any kind of a large room was possible. And that's true in London at the same time. The Academy of Ancient Music, that the original one that commissioned Geminiani to make orchestral arrangements of the Corelli sonatas, they convened and rehearsed and performed in big taverns, specific ones. So that sort of continues a long tradition. The violin, as an aside, the violin specifically, when it first came out, was not allowed to be played in a church because it was too boisterous and grating on the ear to be, considered heavenly and angelic. So you can credit Arcangelo Corelli with bringing the violin into the church for the first time during his lifetime with his sacred concertos. And that was the beginning of the public concert, frankly. During the Renaissance period and the early Baroque period, violin was still considered pretty ill-mannered, and it played loud. And that was, it wasn't beautiful like the harp and the flute. So for genteel people, they didn't really like it very much. And going back to the Scottish and Irish connection, bagpipes at one point in the 17th century, especially in more cultured Scottish manor houses, were banned because they were too raucous to be played inside. That's when the violin became ascendant there, because it was tuned in fifths and it could imitate bagpipe music. So the violin became a substitute for the bagpipe.
I had no idea that the violin was considered ill-mannered, because now I think of it as such an elegant instrument. So times do change.
Yes.
I think that's all the questions we have for now, so we can carry on.
Okay, so one last little note about the Germans in Louisville. Louisville was still is a very significant place, but during the 19th century, it was a very, very significant place in the musical life of the nation as well. So most of you who studied piano as children, or maybe you still do, would recognize the music imprint of C.F. Peters. Published many of the famous piano tutors, piano books and stuff like that. It's still a going publishing concern. They've been in Berlin and Hamburg. Well, they actually translated, they started in Germany and then came to the United States. And then as they contracted their business, they moved back to Germany. So one of the first places they came, actually the very first place they came in the New World was Louisville. So the Peters Music Publishing Company came here. I say here, Louisville. I'm virtual, but my heart is in Louisville. There were family members, WF, WC, CF that we just talked about. Those were all brothers, and one was in Pittsburgh, one was in Louisville. The one that was in Louisville moved up to Cincinnati as Cincinnati became a more burgeoning, easier place to do big volume business. But they kept their music stores and their publishing imprint in Louisville. So W.C. Peters is pretty famous for us by his big hit, his big economic score of that early publishing period was his association with a Pittsburgh composer whose name was Stephen Foster. So Stephen Foster was sent to Cincinnati to serve as his brother's bookkeeper, and he was composing music all along. And as a result, at that time, he had 4 or 5 songs that he interested the Peters Music Publishing Company in Louisville in publishing. So old Uncle Ned, you may know. The one you definitely know is Oh Susanna. This is from 1846, 1847, 1848. And that made a bucket of money for W.C. Peters Music Publishing. And not so much, it wasn't dirty dealing on the part of the music publisher, but pretty much a composer was paid a set fee. Today we call it, in music, we call it a flat fee. For, I give you here's my song. Oh, great, here's $50 for it. Great, now I'm just gonna make as much money off it as I can, and you still have your $50, so I hope you save it. The whole idea of royalties and everything like that wasn't around in the 19th century at all. Finally, in 1851, Stephen Foster made a contract, an exclusive contract with the publisher Firth and Pond, who I think was in Pittsburgh, and did all the rest of his publications through them, and for which he was paid a one-time lifetime fee of $15,000, which was huge back then. But Stephen Foster wasn't a very good custodian of money, and he went through it in a fairly unhappy, short life. And the legend goes he died penniless. He wasn't penniless, but he certainly wasn't enjoying the rock star life. He was really our first rock star, the first American rock star, Stephen Foster. One of the things that's coming up on the Chamber of Music this weekend, and we made a promise to the Locust Grove audience at the end of 2018, when we retired the piano, was that the last music they would hear played live on the piano was My Old Kentucky Home. And Sunday's concert ends with My Old Kentucky Home, beautifully done. And it's now been recorded for posterity, so you will still know what it sounds like, that music sounds like in the room on that instrument. Of course, the instruments in 1806 for John Broadwood fortepiano, so that was kind of an anomaly. It's a much earlier instrument than Stephen Foster would have known. If anybody's been down to the Rowan family home, the so-called Kentucky home, they have a 1840s era square piano, and it's very interesting because it has mother of pearl, either mother of pearl or abalone keys. The keys look very strange. They look sort of pink. That's actually more the type of instrument. It's a very showy one, but that's more the type of instrument that Stephen Foster would have known. Okay, so where are we in our time? Because I need to budget the last little bit here.
You have about 20 to 25 more minutes. Okay,
great. Do we have any questions that have popped up?
Not any new ones.
Okay. So let's run forward now to the latter part of the 19th century, Locust Grove, and the family that owned Locust Grove, the last family that owned Locust Grove. Well, Hannah, do you remember their names? I don't. I knew it at one point.
The Waters family.
The Waters family.
They owned Locust Grove from 1883 until 1962.
Yes, that's a good long time. And I believe, so I'm going to invoke the name of Emmy Smith. I believe Emmy Smith knew the Waters family, and she used to talk about it often, and how they had cows running on the front lawn, and it just basically was a farm at that time. It wasn't a beautiful grand space that it had been at one point, and then it has now been restored to. But talking about Locust Grove and the birth of our chamber music series. When I first came to Louisville, I toured Locust Grove, and the decoration was really different back then. I'm trying to think if it was Gwen Potts or somebody even earlier said that the decoration was based on what people thought 18th century interiors were in the 50s. There was a lot of dusty rose color and interior design elements, basically not based on history, but just things that would look nice. I remember that the 4-square garden that's over by the visitor center was gorgeous, and it was a project of, I think, the Louisville Garden Club. So it had all these beautiful lilies and roses and lots of flowers and all sorts of stuff. And most of what's in there now would have been considered weeds. But I guess I'm trying to think of when I first toured it. It would have been 1981, maybe. I've watched it change. There was just a little log cabin where Carol is right now. And there was no visitor center. There was, of course, the house, and there were the 2 enormous trees, both gone now, that were on the lawn, which is really the back, where the back of the house is technically, but it's what we all relate to as the front of the house where we enter for concerts. Were they locust trees? I don't know.
We do have some locust trees around the house.
Well, these were enormous. I mean, they were 200-year-old trees if they were a day.
If someone in the chat was around in 1981 and can tell me what trees, that was about negative 25 years before I was aware of Locust Grove.
It may just be my imagination, but I think on my first tour, somebody said, "Oh, these are the Locust Grove trees. These are the locust trees that we give the name of the place to." that might just be apocryphal, but it just might be something that somebody was
They were
inspired.
elm trees, and then there
makes sense.
And then there used to be an oak tree near the dairy. So elm trees are the trees you're remembering, and then they got Dutch elm disease, and they are no more.
Well, they were enormous. They were really beautiful. I thought they were too large to be locust trees, and locust trees are kind of more spindly anyway. I've never seen one that large. I've seen some old ones, but never seen one that large. So this 1981, I found it a fascinating space. I've always been interested in history. I was already doing early music because we mentioned that from age 14. And the fact that Louisville had an authentic 18th century space anywhere in it was amazing to me. The acoustics of the ballroom were apparent. No longer called the ballroom, right?
Now we call it the Great Parlor.
The Great Parlor. So the acoustics of the Great Parlor were readily apparent. We didn't play any music in it. The piano that's there was very much just an artifact. It was not operable. At that time, we didn't know that half of the interior of the instrument was missing, but it looked really good. So the idea of doing some music in there was fascinating. I think in 1982, I met Sam Thomas, who was he the first caretaker?
Yes, he and his brother Jim Thomas were the first caretakers. Their apartment is now my office.
Okay, yes. And then his successor as caretaker was living across the street at that time. The young Susan Riegler lived across the street from Locust Grove, and she was fascinated with it because she grew up across the street from the place, and she always kept a connection to it. And then either 78 or 79, I wish she was here actually. I think 78 or 79, she had come back from Oxford, where she had her university education. And Sam Thomas, I think, was ending his tenure there, and the possibility came up for Susan to become a caretaker. And so she was caretaker. And when I first met her, she was living in the Taylor cabin, which was moved to the site to serve as a visitor center / office / whatever. And we became friends, you know, through music and love of history. Susan was a viola player as well as a trumpet player. Most of you probably know her as a trumpet player. Most of you probably know her as an author and former food critic for the Louisville Courier Journal. But we became friends, and then later she started to study the viola with me because I won my job in the Louisville Orchestra and came there to do an orchestral career. Through those chats, having some nice picnic dinners on the lawn in front of the cabin during the summer, or in the I think it was the kitchen at that time with the enormous fireplace with fire going. We did some chamber music in front of the fireplace. And the idea came up, it's like, has anybody played any chamber music in the ballroom? It's like, well, no, not that I know of. So late in 1982, a woman from the New York Pro Musica came down from New York and was being entertained by Susan and a few other locals. And we were having a very nice dinner again in front of the fireplace, and there in the visitor center, and the topic came up again. And Susan said, well, you know, I have a key. So it was I think it's June. We turned off the alarm, stole into the ballroom. There were no artificial lights then. We set up a couple of music stands, and I think we played violin, horn, and cello, I think. We just did some music to hear what it would sound like. And one of the things that we did was the old, anacreontic song that used to be on display in the ballrooms. It's like, what is this? I don't know. Let's hear what it sounds like. So, oh, that's what that is. So anyway, the windows were open and somebody in the neighborhood heard us and didn't complain about it. And it got back to Emmy Smith, who thought it was a fantastic idea. And she wanted to hear music in the space, and hence the kernel of the thought of Locust Grove Chamber Music was born. So in early 1983, Emmy Smith invited myself, Susan Riegler, one other, what was his name, the last name? His last name is Boyd. It's not James, who was the organ and harpsichord teacher at the Southern Baptist Seminary at the time, to a luncheon at her home there on, I'm trying to think, it was her last home. It's also a historic home. Not so far from Locust Grove, but all surrounded by tract homes now. And she plied us with tea and blackberry muffins that she had made herself. And the discussion about how could we do a chamber music series? First of all, how could we do a chamber music concert? And then how could we do a chamber music series? And the discussion about what instruments would be appropriate in this acoustical space all came up. And with that, the idea of Locust Grove Chamber Music was born. We gave the first concert in, I think, November of 1983. So in 2021, in November, the Chamber Music Series will be 38 years old. Susan is still in town. Emmy has passed on. A lot of wonderful subscribers have passed on, people I'm really honored to have known, people who were part of the intellectual fabric of Louisville, the Binghams. I'll never forget seeing Mr. Bingham carrying his own folding deck chair to an outdoor concert that we did. Actually, his and Mrs. Bingham's. They were just regular people, and yet they loomed large on the stage of the nation, especially politically and intellectually. What else to say about it? But I don't want to get weepy.
Well, I will just say that I have only been with Locust Grove for 7 years, so I've experienced chamber music several times over those last 7 years. And yes, I am our marketing person. So that makes me our primary salesperson, and I really would love to see every one of these faces and names at our next chamber music concert on Sunday. But it is also extremely special to have these 3 concerts recorded because we have music for composers born in the bonds of slavery. That was our first concert of this year. We, because of Bill's special interest in Baroque female composers, we have a lot of female composers who pieces have been played at Locust Grove. And this upcoming concert, which I have already watched because I get a special preview since I put it online, is possibly one of my favorites of all of the concerts I've ever heard at Locust Grove. So knowing that our chamber music concert series is a part of this larger history of Louisville music, this larger extension of the Croghan's legacy in Louisville, and that we are able to bring a part of the past to life in a very specific way, is extremely special to those of us who love Locust Grove. So I'm so grateful, Bill, that you're able to share your memories of the chamber music series, that it's able to be a legacy for Emily Strong-Smith, who you mentioned, and all the other wonderful early subscribers, and that we have the support of our subscribers today. And I hope you know that it's part of your legacy too. It's such a wonderful asset to our community.
I'm very honored to have been associated with it. I'm still honored to be associated with it now. I'm so proud of what we have done, and specifically, yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to Rick Boone, who was our audiovisual engineer for the concerts. That's a wonderful document that he has left for us. And, you know, running back to my bio at the beginning, the recording that Ars Femina did of the Italian opera, the early Italian opera that won all the awards, Rick was the engineer on that. So we got a 5-star rating for the performance. He got a 5-star rating for recorded sound. And
it really was quite the undertaking to record musicians in that space during a pandemic. Everyone was safe. We followed all of the safety precautions, and everyone was safe once it was over, safe and healthy, and continues to be so, knock on wood. Some of us have been vaccinated, so we can keep our musicians even safer. But it was just truly a testament to the spirit of the series that everyone was like, well, we have to make it go on. So it was the ultimate, the show must go on. We did just get a question. Would the chamber music series ever consider having period vocal music joined with the period instruments? And I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let Bill do the commercial.
Well, we already do use vocalists, and we've actually presented some small groups that were a cappella, which is fascinating and wonderful for the acoustic space. There have been a number of vocalists that have been featured among the chamber music. That's going to be hampered a bit now that the piano is out of circulation, because a lot of the early 19th century music is vocal music is accompanied by piano. So that remains to be seen, how that folds out. We could still obviously do madrigal groups and stuff like we have before. And we are open to it. It's not banned at all. There are certain instruments that probably don't belong in our acoustical space, which is inside most. We've had some brass instruments in them, but in the space, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience, because we're just right on top of the performers. And right now, during a pandemic, we're very, very careful about the use of wind instruments. The last month's concert, that was a big concern because we had a flute. So, but
and our flutist was wonderful, but she was in a corner all by herself. So she sounded beautiful. Bill, we do have a couple questions about your background, which is varied and unique. First of all, how did you come to choose the violin, or did it choose you? And do you play any other instruments or styles of violin?
Yes, well, I'm a winner of the Nederland, Colorado Old Time Fiddle Contest in 1975. So there's that. I have some. I am not a jazz musician, but I have been on some jazz recordings. And I'm not going to tell you how to find it, but there's a really old video on YouTube, and if you succeed in finding it, I will have to kill you, of me doing just that. Okay. I have a very eclectic musical taste. I have a fondness for roots country music. I don't like slick Nashville production, but Patsy Cline is all good with me. I play violin viola at a professional level. I play this strange instrument called the viola d'amore that we talked about earlier. That was my introduction to early music. I play cello competently enough to hold up the cello part through Beethoven Opus 18, those of you who are musically knowledgeable. I play piano well enough to fool people into thinking I play the piano, which is probably good enough, but I wouldn't ever do it professionally. I've accompanied some students on recitals occasionally, but it depends on how dumb the accompaniment is. So I'm not going to put any kind of accolades on my playing other than violin, viola, and viola d'amore, all of which I'm recorded on. Yeah, I was the world's most unhappy piano student at age 7 when I was deposited on the piano. My father, we moved to Switzerland when I was 8. My father came to me and he said, "Your mother and I have talked, and we will go to the great difficulty and expense of moving to your piano to Switzerland, but you have to practice without being nagged and with joy in your heart, and we'll go to that extra effort, or you could give up now." And I thought, this is a trap. This is a trap. So he said, do you mean I could stop? He said, yes, you could. And my first question was, do I have to see the piano teacher again? And he said, yes, you do. So it was a good moment of, teaching a child about closure. So when we lived in Switzerland, for the first time, because I never liked the violin when I heard it on television. The television was a bad medium for violin, and that was pretty much my only exposure to it. Violin I thought it sounded nervous and hysterical because people always played the most bizarre things, because it was showy, and it didn't sound good on a television speaker. So we were in Switzerland. I think we were in a fine restaurant, and there was a string quartet playing, and I was fascinated, and I just couldn't take my eyes off the violin. And I told my mother, I said, I need one of those. You just get me one of those. I can figure out how to do it. I don't need lessons. I don't need anything like that. If you get me one, I can figure out how to play it.
That was me with the piano, as I wanted to play piano. But I love the idea that you chose it, but it also found you. It
totally found me.
It also found you, and then that meant that you found Locust Grove. So
absolutely
pleased to have you. If you have final questions, everyone, you can go ahead and leave them in the chat. I would ask you one other question. Could you the information about St. Cecilia's Orchestra? We're going to look into our records to see if we have any records of the Croghan's attending St. Cecilia's Orchestra presentations, but what were the dates for that orchestra again? So
approximately 1818 to 1826.
Okay.
And if they were the kind of people, those were by subscription, the Croghan's would have received an invitation to, okay. But it was invitation to pay for your ticket.
Sure.
But yeah, there are a few of those that are still existing. I think the Filson Society may have some.
Yeah, we'll have to look into it, because if the Croghan's are cultured people of Louisville, they're living in Louisville at that time, it makes a lot of sense that they would participate in an orchestra. We know they subscribe to other similar groups or clubs, so we'll have to look into St. Cecilia's Orchestra. If you have a final question, you can leave it in the chat. But Bill, it's been wonderful to have you with us. And I'm continually getting the request for you to play us off with something, if you are willing. Well, oh, good. It was so hard to convince him, everyone.
That's the best my memory can serve me.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Happy St. Pat's, everyone.
That was just wonderful. That was just like, we believe it was either Nicholas, Charles, or Edmund who played the violin at Locust Grove. We know that we bought violin strings, and it's like their spirit just wafted into the room. Bill, thank you so much for being with us. To all of our wonderful lecture attendees today, we're so pleased that you were with us. It was wonderful to have you joining us. And you will get an email from me in the next day or so with information about our next lecture, which is next Wednesday, March 24th at this same time, and it will focus on the enslaved interpretation and history here at Locust Grove. So we'll be bringing you up to date on everything we've been working on regarding the lives of the enslaved. And one final plug for our chamber music concert series this Sunday, March 21st. So you'll get information about that in your email as well. It will also feature the musical stylings of Bill Bauer. So you can join us for that. Thank you all so much for being with us. Bill, thank you for being with us from St. Louis, and everyone have a safe spring and a happy St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.